I cleaned the pharmacy out, got back to the house. It was about 3 days later. I had somebody that went with me, and he had been selling some of his because we split it.
Hmm.
And he sold some to a CI.
Wow.
If any listeners don't know what that is, it's a confidential informant. And so about 3 days later, the FBI task force, local police department, and the sheriff's department all came through the doors about 3 a.m. and guns in the face, throw you to the ground, handcuffs, the
Hmm.
whole 9 yards. I went to jail, sat there for about a week, realized that I had 5 felonies. I started off with one, and before it was over, they went ahead and stuck 4 more on there. I had a commercial burglary charge and 4 possessions of controlled substance to the nth degree,
Oh yeah.
as far as they
They
could take
tack
it.
them on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did attempt to turn them into sell charges, where I was, trying to sell the stuff, but
Distribution.
I
Yeah.
was, even though I was super, super high, because I'd been like doing the whole pharmacy. Remember that addictive personality, and I've got a pharmacy in the house. Like I just went from snorting one pill to snorting the next one, and then I took a breath and then snorted another one. Like I was way out there when I got arrested. Um, I was at least coherent enough to say that no, I wasn't. I was just going to do them all. I wasn't planning on selling any of them. This was for personal use.
Just like
And
Willie Nelson. This is my
right,
personal stash.
that's right. Um,
Uh,
but I had they added it up and all that, and we had actually, me and the guy that I took with me, we had added it up. We had a whole plan. All that aside, it was, when it was all said and done, I had about my part of it was about $500,000 worth of narcotics, and
wow.
um, so they were after me, and they considered me the mastermind of the of the scheme, the plan, and they never even gave me a chance. I probably, looking back, I don't know. There was probably some people I didn't really care for. I probably would have rolled on them if they would have gave me a chance, but they didn't even give me a chance. They had the guy they were looking for, and it was me.
Yeah.
So
No deal for you.
yeah, but I sat in there for a week, and then they moved me to the county jail, and I sat in there for about a month. But from there, I went to a faith-based recovery program, and then my life started to change. But there are some amazing stories within that section alone where I was in jail and I challenged God. God answered, and my life started changing. So,
Mhm. What was the challenge like?
well, so here I am. I've got 10 years worth of drug addiction and pain and all this destruction. And if you probably know a good bit about addiction and trauma and that sort of thing, and for anybody listening that doesn't, it kind of compounds. Like you don't deal with the first thing before the
Mm,
next thing
you're
makes it
absolutely
worse,
right.
and then the next thing, and so it just gets exponentially worse. It's like problem squared, squared,
Yeah,
squared, and
pretty
so I
much
had
like
all.
snowball. Just
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and I had an avalanche from Mount Everest, like all coming down. And so I had been in that city jail for about a week, and so when I moved to the county, they my head started clearing up. I had, I'd been throwing up every day in this metal toilet that 60 other people were using. I was in bad shape, and today I'm around 174, 175 pounds. Back then I was 115, and so I was skin and bones. And anyway, just in real, real rough shape. But my head started clearing up, and they delivered the newspaper. And so I go over to there to get the newspaper, and it was real early in the morning. I wasn't sleeping because if you're coming off of opiates, like you don't sleep.
Hmm.
You might sleep an hour here or there, but anyway, one guy had got the main section, and another guy got the sports, and I was left with whatever. And I passed up all the rest of it and picked out the religion section. And that's a section that to this day, I probably wouldn't pick up the religion section. Okay.
Right.
It's not the most exciting. And, but at the time I hated God. Yeah. I absolutely hated God, because in my mind and in my whole being, it was, if God does exist, then he wouldn't, then he must not love me,
Right.
because
No, I get you.
if God existed, he wouldn't have allowed that to happen if he truly loved me.
Mm-hmm.
And so God therefore must not exist, because I was always told that God is a loving God, he wants the best for you and all this stuff. And I immediately balled all that up and said lie. I just labeled it with lie, and
Yeah.
then threw it away. Because I had spent 10 years, that 10 years prior, every time I met a Christian, I would use every bit of science that I knew to destroy their faith.
Mm-hmm.
I was very well versed in, like, I guess, agnostic, atheist apologetics, so to speak. I was well informed. So I pick up this religion section. I said all that to give you a background, like,
Gotcha.
I'm not the guy to pick up the religion section at this point in my life. And so I pick up the religion section and I look in the right-hand column, and there's a pastor out of the next city over to me. And he writes, a little short article, and I couldn't tell you what the article said to this day, but in there was the verse Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. And it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I read that, it was like I was being slapped upside the head. I mean, I had never had God's word come alive like that and like penetrate my very being. It's hard to describe, but it's like you hear it on multiple levels. Okay. Not only are you telling yourself this, but like in your spirit, you're experiencing the scripture is
The
kind of what it's
reality of
like.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been blessed with a certain degree of intelligence, and I'd always taken AP and honor classes in school, and always had great grades and top of my class, all that stuff, president of student council. And when I read verse 5, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And when I read that, I instantly realized that the best me got me on my way to prison. Like, no matter how smart I thought I was,
That's good.
that's where I ended up. And that's the best I could manage on my own,
Yeah.
Trying to deal with all this mess in my life. But then there was verse 6, where I found hope, but in all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct your paths. And so I was like, okay, challenge issued, basically.
Right.
It was very disrespectful. Is the way I look at it now, from where I'm at. But where I was at that time, that was probably the closest thing to prayer that I could manage.
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful that he didn't just like strike me down right there by issuing a challenge after all this. But basically what I said was, okay, if you're real, then prove it. If you're real, then, I'm on my way to prison. I've got 5 felonies. Every one of them carries 7 years. It was a crime of opportunity because it was done during a hurricane. So they could double the time on all the charges. And I could have been facing some serious time. I'm 28 years old at this point, and I'm scared, and I'm willing to do whatever to not go to prison for the rest of my life. And so I said, if you're real, then just do something to keep me from going to prison for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And that's crazy because, I'm thinking about the scenario and, almost once the feds get involved, like usually the feds don't get involved unless they're going to give you 7 years. So if you tell me that you didn't serve 7 years in prison, I'm just going to be like amazed. Like,
well, yeah. Yeah, and so not only that, but like it was 7 years on one charge, and I had five of them. So
Yeah.
you know, 35 years, and then you double that
Yeah.
as a crime of opportunity. And so it could have been serious. But once I issued that challenge, prior to that, I just need to fill this in because it won't make sense if I don't. I'd had a conversation with my mother where she said, "You're not my son. I don't want to hear from you. Excuse me. You made your bed, now lay in it." And she was just upset, you know. To this day, she claims she didn't say it, but I can assure you she did. But it was
Yeah.
almost like God had her say that specifically so that I would give up all hope, because that was my last lifeline. Like, if once my mom shut me off, I knew that I had no hope. And it was
Hmm.
shortly after that that I'd read the paper. Like, it was the next day. But an hour after I issued that challenge, I had called my wife. We got married a week before I burglarized this pharmacy. Okay. And yeah. And we'd
Happy
actually got
honeymoon,
married in a
baby.
funeral home, which was kind of funny. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, we got married in a funeral home. She was, I had drug her into that lifestyle. She was nowhere near where I was, but she was definitely involved. She ended up getting probation from all of it, and she completed successfully, and her record's been expunged. But um, anyway, I called my wife, and she says, "Your mom wants you to call her." And I was like, "Okay, you know, she probably just wants to yell at me or whatever, but I'll call her." And so I call, and she's first thing out of her mouth, she said, "Jesse, you're my son. You'll always be my son. I love you. Hang in there. We're getting you an attorney. We're going to get you some help." And I was just floored, because when my mom says, like, it's hard to imagine it without knowing who my mom is. But when my mom says something, that's it. That's, you can write it down, you can chisel it into stone. It's not changing. And so for her to change that rapidly, um, after me issuing that challenge, I just kind of like looked up, you know, like, okay, you know,
Something's working. Yeah.
this may be you, you know. It's kind of the conversation I started having. I still didn't want to believe that God was working on my behalf, but it was, it's hard not to acknowledge that difference. And so within a couple days, I found out that my mom had gotten me the best attorney around. Guy's super high profile. Anyway, she got him, and within a couple weeks after that, I ended up this funny story. She said, "We're going to get you into rehab." The attorney said the best thing for you to do is to go to rehab and complete before you go to court. So we're going to send you to rehab, but I'm having trouble finding a place to get you in because I spent all this money on this attorney and I don't have several $1,000s to get you into another place. And I was like, she said, "Well, one of them," she said, "it could be 30 days, could be 90 days, like 3 months, or it could be 6 months." I said, "Look, I don't care. It can be 30 days, 90 days, 6 months. It could be a year. I'm good with it. Like, I just want out of jail, you know,
Right.
send me to treatment." And God was well aware of everything that I was saying the entire time, obviously. And as soon as I said, "I don't care even if it's a year long," the only facility that could get me in was a year long, and it was absolutely free.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was gonna make sure that this stuff stuck.
Yeah, yeah. And it was
Uh,
free, you know, which
yeah.
is crazy. You know, everybody charges a few $1,000s for treatment. And so to get in for free and then for an entire year is just unheard of. And so I ended up leaving. I was actually transported from the ADC, the Adult Detention Center, to their custody. They showed up at the bondsman's office, and I'm wearing the clothes that I was arrested in that had been like all moldy, and because they were wet when I got arrested, because I'd gotten like water all over them before they threw me down and stuff. But anyway, um, So I'm wearing these like stinky, nasty clothes.